Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back into the video today, and today I'm going to be talking about why the Houston Texans are insanely underrated. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while now as a Texans fan, and keep in mind before I get started in talking about why the Texans are underrated and why they will be a fun team to watch in 2023, nothing I will say, and I will try my best, nothing I say in this video will be biased. The Texans, who have improved massively this offseason at every aspect you can look at, whether it's the defense, the offense, or the offensive line, or coaching, they've improved a little bit for everything there was a struggle at last season. Look at the defensive line. That has improved. Added in Will Anderson Jr. in the draft. Added in Sheldon Rankins in free agency. Added in a couple other pieces. Dylan Horton from TCU. I think that was the 4th round. You added a couple other pieces on the defensive line as well. Chase Winovich was another guy they added in free agency. A couple other guys of the defensive line that were brought in. The defensive line and run stopping was a problem last year. Here's a guy who's a great run stopper and linebacker. Linebacker was a position the Texans needed to upgrade. They added in Denzel Perryman, someone who is going to be great next to some of these other younger linebackers on this roster, like Christian Harris and Henry To'oTo'o, the Alabama linebacker core. Right there with To'oTo'o and Harris. Those are two guys that are expected to be really good players for this Texans defense. And Denzel Perryman's been a Pro Bowler at least once or twice before, and he's looked really good for the Houston Texans in training camp and preseason. Had an interception picking off Tua Tagovailoa on the first play of the preseason game the other day against the Miami Dolphins. And not only that, but he also had a sack in the first game of the preseason against the New England Patriots. He's going to be great for this defense. You look at the secondary has improved. You have second-year players like Jalen Petrie and Derek Stingley Jr., who was the 3rd overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft, is expected to be more healthy this upcoming season. Only played 9 games in his rookie year and was really good in his rookie year. The only thing was had trouble, touching the field. Jalen Petrie was obviously probably the best player for this Houston Texans defense last season. He's improved. It's looked like he's way better at stopping the run now than he was before. He's also, he's older. I think he's, gained a couple pounds as well. And he's going to be great on this secondary, and especially with a new partner at starting safety right next to him and a veteran, especially with someone that head coach DeMeco Ryans is familiar with, Jamie Ward. He's a guy that is expected to have a big season for this Texans defense and, be great in the secondary next to the younger guys and Jalen Petrie and Derek Stingley Jr. How about another veteran who was on this roster last year but has been great for the Texans in training camp, Steven Nelson. I'm so excited to watch him at corner next year. You have that 1-2 punch at the cornerback with Derek Stingley Jr., and Steven Nelson, and that doesn't even cut it with this secondary. You have Shaquille Griffin, who we signed from Jacksonville. He's a stud. You have Desmond King II. I really love him. He's going to be great for the Texans secondary as a backup. Who else am I missing? You also have Eric Murray, a couple other guys on this secondary that are really solid. I think the secondary for the Texans is going to be way better. This defense is going to be way better. I mean, this defense was already, solid last year. I'm pretty sure they were 5th in sacks and they were 18th in turnovers, but they were like 28th or 29th in points per game as a defense. So you had 2 really solid stats with the sacks and the turnovers, but then you have your points per game and the yards per game that the Texans were allowing, and that was not good. They were like last in the NFL with those 2 stats. And those are 2 stats that I think will be way better for the Houston Texans this season. Not only do you have the defense upgrading with players, but you have the defense upgrading with coaching staff. This is a new coaching staff with the defense, with DeMeco Ryans leading that coaching staff, a new defensive coordinator. DeMeco will be calling the plays with the defense, but they did hire a new defensive coordinator from from San Francisco. DeMeco's going to run this defense. He's going to lead this defense, and he's a hell of a leader. He's great with, leading this defense as the head coach, and I think this defense is going to be very underrated this upcoming season. You have stacked players all around, from the defensive line to the linebackers to the secondary, with Will Anderson Jr. And Jonathan Grenard on the defensive line. And then a couple other pieces like Sheldon Rankings and Roy Lopez and, who else am I missing? Malik Collins also on that defensive line with a couple other players that I didn't mention on that defensive line. Then the linebacker core, you have Denzel Perryman, a former Pro Bowler, with, some younger guys like Christian Harris and Henry Tuoto, Alabama linebackers who are expected to be, they're expected to be definitely, they're probably expected to be, really good players for this Texans defense, especially Christian Harris. And then you have a couple of solid linebackers on this linebacker core like Corey Littleton. You also have Blake Cashman and Christian Kirksey. Then that secondary, I already talked about it, but let's go over it again. Jalen Petrie, Jimmy Ward, Steven Nelson, Derek Stingley Jr., and, some backups like Desmond King II and Shaquille Griffin and Eric Murray. This defense is going to be way better. It's upgraded on, with the players and the coaching. And then the offense, that's another thing. I think it's upgraded quite a bit. I talked about some of the problems on the defense last year, but let's look at some of the problems on the offense last year. CJ Stroud, some of the problems on the offense last year. Quarterback, Davis Mills was terrible. I think he threw 13 interceptions and was just not a good leader. Didn't have good weapons either. You improved that as well. You brought in CJ Stroud in the draft with the second overall pick. He's looked really good in training camp, and he looked really solid for the Texans in their preseason game against the Miami Dolphins, throwing for 60 passing yards and leading his first ever scoring drive. And then offensive line was a problem last year. The Texans upgraded this offensive line a little bit, drafting Juice Scruggs in the second round, and also trading for veteran from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Shaq Mason, right guard, who will help this O-line a lot. And then you also have Laramie Tunsil, who was extended. Titus Howard on this offensive line. Kenyon Green, that's going to be another thing. The first-round pick from last year, rumor has it that he's improved since last season. The offensive line is improved. And then weapons, wide receivers. That was a problem last year for Davis Mills. Look at the only weapons really he had at wide receiver last year was Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins. Here's what C.J. Stroud has this upcoming season at wide receiver. You signed Robert Woods and Noah Brown, two wide receivers, one from Dallas, one from Tennessee, who had really solid seasons with their previous teams last season. You drafted Tank Dell, who's been a total stud with the Texans, played in state with the Cougars, and you drafted him. He's been a monster for the Texans through training camp. Just a couple days ago, had 3 touchdowns in a training camp game and had a touchdown in the Patriots game in the preseason. He's been a stud. You also drafted Xavier Hutchinson, and you have Nico Collins, who's improved quite a bit at wide receiver going into his third year. And also, your second-round pick in 2022, John Mechie, is also returning from having leukemia and missing his rookie season in 2022. And not only that, a couple more weapons that have improved for C.J. Stroud. You have Dalton Schultz at the tight end, who was the Dallas Cowboys starting tight end. And you also added in running back Devin Singletary and running back Mike Boone. Devin Singletary was the starting running back for the Buffalo Bills last season. And also you have rookie running back or second-year running back Dameon Pierce, who is going into his second year, was a great rushing back last season. Apparently, rumors has it that this season he's going to be way more effective in the pass game, which is not something he was really, effective for the Texans last season. And he's going to be way more effective for the Texans passing game this season. And he's lost some weight with 15 pounds dropping for Dameon Pierce. And then a couple other things why this Texans team is, very underrated. Here's one thing. Here are a couple of my final 3 things. If you look at the projected win total for this Texans team, the projected win total is in the area of 5.5 to 6.5. And I've seen a lot of people say the Texans are going to only win in the area of 3 to 5 games this season. That's just crazy. The Texans have an easy schedule. I've looked over their schedule. I think they can easily win in the area of 7 to 9 ball games this year. Not only that, how does this team not have any national televised games at all? Look at the Carolina Panthers, a team who just had the first overall pick with Bryce Young, and they have 3 national televised games this season. While the Houston Texans not only have, 1 top 3 pick, 2. C.J. Stroud, the second overall pick, and Will Anderson Jr., the third overall pick. And they also have Derek Stingley Jr., the third overall pick from last year. So it's just crazy to me that they have, from the last 2 drafts, have 3 top 3 picks. In the last 2 drafts have they have 3 players that were drafted in the top 3, and they have no whatsoever national televised games. They have an easy schedule. They face the NFC South. They play their own South in the AFC South. Face the Colts twice. Face the Titans twice. Face the Jaguars twice. They have a couple other easier games in that schedule. They play the Cardinals. They have a couple of the easier games that I think should be easier games. They have some hard games too. They play the Jets, they play the Broncos, they play the Ravens. But this is a way easier schedule that the Texans had last year. And honestly, people think the Texans are going to win 3 to 6 games this year. I could see the Texans winning 6 games this season, sure. But I think the Texans will win 7 and 9 games this year. And that is why the Houston Texans are insanely underrated. That's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. That's it for the video, and hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts on the Houston Texans for this upcoming season, and peace out. Go Texans.